Welcome to 5 Day Snacks, your go to podcast for insights on thriving in dynamic and fast growing teams. Here, we aim to reflect, pause, and rethink our daily grind for a better, more human future. I'm your host Mansi, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Sumit Saxena. He is the founder of Merren, an omnichannel customer survey, feedback, and experience platform that allows businesses to build a feedback mechanism that increases customer response rate by up to 10x. Sumit is also the co-founder of Pixights Consulting, a leading market research agency in India. He has worked with brands like Siemens, Vodafone, Jio, Raymond, Z, Disney, Sony, Economic Times, RPG Group, Emami, as well as government projects. Sumit has an MBA degree from Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth and a master's in communication from MICA Ahmedabad. Let's give a warm welcome to Sunit, the founder of Merren, a market research and consulting professional with expertise in building actionable insights using technology to capture consumer feedback. Sumit, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the 5 Day Snacks podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me here. Very excited to talk to you and to your viewers. So let's go for it.
Likewise. Okay, so before we get into our conversation, I would just like to set expectations for our listeners. Today, we are diving deep into the world of customer experience, insights, and strategies that build lasting connections. We'll be exploring Sumit's amazing journey and his expertise in customer insights, and I'm excited to learn everything I can, Sumit. So, my first question to you would be that looking back over your career, which has been so extensive, your career in customer insights, what have been some of the most significant shifts in the industry that you've observed?
So when you say extensive, I'm hearing old, but both are true. So I
Not at
started
all.
my career. Facts are facts. Can't help it. I started
Yeah,
my career in 2001. So yeah, it's been a while.
right.
Um, and I've been a career market researcher slash management consultant. Um, so when I started in 2001, market research was a very different world, right?
Right,
And I'm saying market research, but essentially what I'm saying is consumer insights as a field was a very different world.
right,
Um, Especially most of the data that we were getting on the customer was actually actively solicited from the customer. So we would go to the customers using survey tools or focus groups or interviews, and we'll
right.
collect that data. The biggest transition that I've seen unfurling in front of my own eyes is basically this whole um, like deluge of data that now uh,
Hmm.
we're getting, which is unsolicited, right? So all
Right,
the transactional data that we get, all the behavior data that we get by not asking but actually measuring what people are doing, the transactions they're undertaking.
right.
We've seen over last 20 years the ability to collect that data has improved, ability to store that data has improved, ability to
Absolutely.
analyze that data has improved. So consumer data is no longer solicited data.
Hmm.
It's solicited data and also unsolicited data. And that's completely changed the way people look at data. One good thing that has happened is now use of data and therefore consumer insights is more mainstream, right? So
Right.
earlier, it wasn't like, so, I mean, for example, the industry you and I work in,
Yeah.
if you're not looking at your customer data, you can't move forward, right? So I think there is
100%.
a lot more mainstreaming of it.
Hmm.
What also happened is the change in the profile of people who are now involved with customer insights, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my time, and you'll see it in my background as well, uh, it's people from marketing or
Right,
people who've done it. Is a lot of those people used to come into market research,
right,
um, and they still do. A lot of them still do.
right.
But there is also another set of people who started to come into market research, and this might be interesting for your listeners as well, uh, because there is so much of data pipelining. Okay, how do I collect this data? How do I
Right.
store this information? How do I analyze that data? So a lot of profile of people who have started coming into consumer insights are people from software background,
Hmm.
people who are good with actually figuring out how to do that data pipelining, how to
Right.
efficiently store data, how to run models, how to run like ML models on it, how to run AI on top of it as we go along. So, um, so that's a good thing, right? So we've now
Absolutely.
got people from a new set of people bringing a new set of perspective on the same ideas.
Right.
One side of that is the focus is now more on models and
Hmm.
analytics than
Right.
on insight,
Hmm.
right? So you want now models to automatically throw insights.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
there is a lot of talk around AI, and at some point maybe AI would get there. But the fact is, people who've come from software background, the best people who end up in data analysis are people who actually adapt themselves and look at inciting from the lens of a human being, right?
Right.
Not from the
Absolutely.
lens of, right? I can have like tons of model, right? I can run like random forest on something and come up with some kind of insight. But unless there is a human connection to it, it wowould never start to be real insight. It would
Agreed.
always, it'll always be like data, and then there is a layer of maybe some understanding put on top of it.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that's the major shift, right? So major shift is lots more data, therefore profile of people changing, and therefore the way they are at this point inciting, that's changing. So these are like level 2, level 3 impact of that whole deluge of data that we're looking at.
Right. I think I definitely agree with you here. The way we have also been, there is a very big boom in how people are using AI now. Especially, it becomes very easy and accessible for people to get answers. But on top of that, insight for me, because I recently was reading about insight cracking, and insight for me, how when you think about insight, yeah, sure, there is data and then you get analytics from it, right? But the only way for it to actually change something in your business or whatever you goal you're trying to reach is if you understand why what is happening, and that why you can
Correct,
only get from your very human understanding of like people and how people work.
correct. And you mentioned AI. You have to realize that the Gen AI that we are using today are language models. Okay,
Right.
so essentially what they're giving you are the linkages which are the most obvious to that model, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Insights can be counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, the best work that I've done, the insights were completely counterintuitive. It changed the way people started looking at their customers, right?
Right.
By definition, models, if you look at statistics, right? So if you look at like regression underlying, which is underlying a lot of these ML models, regressions work best when you are at the center of that data, right?
Right.
At the edges, it's the fit starts to suffer, right? It's not as
Right.
good as fit. Insights actually sit at that corner or on the edges anyway. Otherwise, it's intuition. You already know
Right.
that. So
Absolutely.
you need to understand how AI can help. And this is not a sly on AI at all. And I think AI is going to be very, very important. But you have to understand the limitations of the tool that you're using. You can't be lazy because AI is doing half the work for you, right?
Absolutely.
Your mental effort has to go in, your human connection still has to be there. You still have to read, and reading data is a skill, right? And it takes effort to
Yeah.
actually read data and not to just pump it into a model or give it to AI and say, okay, give me insights. It will
Yeah.
not give you insights, it will give you an answer.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, definitely. Sumit, so since we talked so much about market research, business development, and things like that, I do have a question for you that you've worked in
yeah.
market research, business development, and strategy consulting. And how
Okay.
have these experiences sort of shaped how you approach businesses and customer relationships today?
Okay. So I've never thought of it like that, but I mean, it's almost like a, a, a wireframe you can create, right? So if you are a BD guy or a sales guy, what's your top job? Your top job is to understand the problem that the customer is facing and
Right,
try to find out an answer, or try and fit your product, your solution in a way, or pitch it in a way that it solves somebody's problem. So, and today when I go as a market researcher or a management consultant to a company, that's exactly what I'm doing, right? So I'm trying to
right.
understand what is the problem that has been brought to the table,
Hmm.
right? And I think management consultants are great at doing this. And the one thing that I learned spending time in management consulting industry was actually sitting down with the stakeholders to understand and uncover the real problem, right? Sometimes what
Right,
happens is that the problem that has been told to you, or the problem that's been articulated, is probably a manifestation of an underlying problem, right?
Right.
So even before you go and start digging into data to figure out the answer to it, you need to understand what the real problem is, right?
Right.
And this is where management consultants have a very different way of approaching a problem. And I think that's been very helpful when it comes to actually figuring out the problem we are trying to solve.
Right.
Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so let's say you're a marketing guy, and you're worried about your engagement with your
Right.
audience. You think engagement is a problem, right? But it's possible that the audience that you're talking to, that itself is wrong, right?
Right.
It might be in
Absolutely.
sync with the message or the product that you're trying to sell to them. So your brief to me can be, oh, we're not engaging with the audience. And if I start to take that brief, I
Hmm.
would now start to look at content and say, okay, this is where your content is going wrong.
Right.
Whereas a management consultant would take a step back. Okay,
Hmm.
tell me who's your audience first. Okay, what is the
Right.
definition of audience? Does this now sync up with the audience you actually want to talk to? Right?
Right.
Is it possible that the audience itself is wrong and the content was right all along? So I think that's where the consulting experience really helps.
Hmm.
Uh, Market research itself is a technical job. So you
Right.
need to know the kind of matrices that you will be going after. How do you ask a question in a way that it doesn't become a leading question? What questions come before the other questions? How do you not contaminate the data? How do you not lead a respondent? So I think for my job, that's hygiene level skill that you need to have. But
Right.
having that perspective of somebody uh, who's been in sales and being in management consultant, I think has added a little bit more. I would want to believe,
Right.
but I'll leave it to my clients to answer.
Right. Absolutely. We talked about insights and human connections a little, and this is just a question that popped off in my brain right now. That at the end of the day, when we think about it, understanding customers is about connecting with the people behind them, right? So, what is the key to making that human connection through data and insights that we gather?
Ah, so any data point in isolation is just that. It's a data point, right?
Right.
It becomes insight only if you put it in perspective of the context that this person is living in. Okay,
Right.
so I'll take an example of Gen Z as an audience. Okay,
Right.
it's just as an example to explain the point I'm trying to make. Um, Snapchat works well, right?
Right. Yeah.
Snapchat works very well in Gen Z, and the question is why? I mean, you've got WhatsApp Messenger, you've got Telegram, you've got Facebook. Uh, why Snapchat? And there'll be like a lot of surface level answers, right? So
Right.
the obvious answers like it deletes the photos after some time and those kind of or deletes the message after some time. But hold on, WhatsApp also does that, right? You can have disappearing messages and
Right.
that well, right? So why is it that Gen Z prefer Snapchat? Okay, so to understand that, you have to understand where this person is coming from, right?
Hmm.
We as part of our so we have something in Pixights called a trend analysis.
Right.
We do an annual trend spotting exercise amongst youth every year.
Right.
And one of the things that we figured after running two or three of these was that actually the youth, specifically Gen Z, is actually leading a dual life. Okay, so he's
Right.
got dual identity. One is the identity at home, right? So at home, he projects a certain persona, right?
Hmm.
Think of an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, maybe just started going to college, just found his or her freedom, um, probably has a girlfriend people don't know at home, or maybe immediate family knows, extended family does not know.
Right.
But he's playing persona at home, and that's sacrosanct, right? I
Hmm.
There is a certain expectation from the family side, and I'm trying to live as close to that as possible, right?
Right.
And this breaks. When this breaks, you become a rebel, right? You now know this cannot be restored, so you become a rebel. So that's like the black sheep of the family that you see.
Right.
Okay. The other identity this guy is playing is when he actually goes to his school or his college, he needs to project a persona there as well, right? And it's very distinct from his home persona. He now
Right.
does not want seen as meek, as obedient, he actually wants to play the rebel there. He wants to play the trendsetter there. He wants to play somebody who knows things, right?
Right.
And now imagine a 17-year-old walking on eggshells because he or she is worried that these personas would start to interfere with each other.
Polite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get, as a college going student, I don't want to get food from home because that's a window to my home identity,
Right.
right? Similarly, I don't want my folks at my home to see what I do at school because that would completely break the home identity if that happens, right?
Yeah.
Snapchat therefore works very well, right? Snapchat is WhatsApp. My parents are very comfortable with
Hmm.
Snapchat. Right? They'll
Yeah,
probably not even
absolutely.
look at Snapchat because they don't know there is something called Snapchat sitting there.
Yeah.
Even if they do, it would automatically delete the messages, so I'm safe there. And WhatsApp is seen as my dad's messenger, right?
Hmm.
Whereas Snapchat is seen as as a young person's phone. So it
Right.
basically gives them that social identity which a
Hmm.
WhatsApp messenger would not do, right?
Right.
He also have WhatsApp, right?
Yeah.
He will talk to his parents on that, his relatives on that. He will never talk to his parents on Snapchat, right?
Agreed.
Because
Yeah.
so it's one thing to say, okay, Snapchat works with youth, but you have to understand why it works with youth and why
Right.
probably years down the line this might not be true, because this
Right.
guy will not be a 27-year 23-year-old anymore. he'll he'll not have this duality of identity that he's managing today. At 32, 33, that would disappear, and so would his use of Snapchat. So you have
Right.
to understand, I mean, in isolation, you can look at, oh, it's popular amongst youth, and that's the data point. But
Right.
why important, unless you put it into context, you can't
Hmm.
understand.
Very
Sorry, long
interesting.
way, but
No, that's absolutely, given the example, I truly understand how to, sort of think beyond the surface level understanding of how things work and how you use data points to actually reach that solution. So that was really appreciated. Thank you, Sumit. Okay, so I sort of have a question. We're going to sidetrack here a little bit. I have a question for you that have you ever faced a project that made you sort of pause and reassess your strategy or your approach towards it? That you were going a certain way and you
Hmm.
realized that it's not working out, and what made you, sort of take a pause and reassess there?
So this is now the origin story of Merren, right? And
Okay,
it invariably pause and reflect kind of leads to growth, right?
right,
Uh, so 2001 started market research career. We used to send out links for people to answer. I mean, at that point, online surveys were just about starting. So when they were like international projects and all with very high-end audience, we used to use online surveys. You, so if you sent 100 invitations, you used to get 17, 18 responses,
right,
which people used to think, oh, we got to get only 17, 18 responses. You do this today, uh, you'll probably get less than one response on average. So you'll get 0.5, 0.4 kind of responses today. Okay.
right.
And this is not something that has happened overnight. It's been
Okay,
happening since 2001. And gradually we have seen the response rate taper off. I mean,
right.
imagine, do you recall the last online survey you answered?
Not really, no.
Yeah, you don't remember, right? And
Yeah,
you'll probably, if you go and like search your inbox, you'll probably have 15 sitting there in last 1 month, right?
right.
We'll completely ignore that, right? Who's
Yeah,
who's going to answer an online survey? And it's a growing problem in the industry.
right,
Uh, but the point is, because it's happening very gradually, people are okay with it. Okay, for
right,
us, actually, it came to head during COVID,
right,
right? At the time of COVID, so the way the market research industry therefore works, because there is no response rate this way, is that we use other mediums, right? We
right,
send an interviewer to do a survey, or you'll do it telephonically. Even telephonically, that response rate is going down increasingly. But we could use other ways of collecting data.
right,
In COVID that stopped, right? I can't send a person to your house to actually tabulate data, right?
right,
That's the biggest way data is collected if you've had census people at your home, that's a typical way of like somebody would come with a device or with a pen and paper and ask you questions and keep noting down.
Right.
And that stopped in COVID, and we realized for 3 months we had zero revenue.
Right.
Zero revenue simply because we could not finish our projects. Not that we didn't have projects,
Hmm.
we had projects, but we simply could not execute it. So at that time, out of sheer desperation, and sheer desperations are sometimes wonderful things, out of sheer desperation, and I'm not even a techie, I just figured out a couple of APIs from different places, put together a WhatsApp survey, sent it out without the permission of the client. Right?
Right.
I mean, if I asked them, they would have said yes or no. But
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I mean, I didn't want to give them that power of saying no, because I wanted my revenue. This was the only way of generating anything at that point.
Right. Right.
And I was absolutely sure that this is going to break in the field, because, as I said, I'm not a techie. I'm tech savvy without being a techie.
Right.
Uh, I mean, to my surprise, we got the required sample, went back to the client, told them, listen, this is the response. Their first response was, like, are you kidding me, right? There is obviously no way of for you to collect this data at this point.
Right.
No, this is what I did. And this guy takes a pause and says, I have 3 more projects. Would you do this?
Oh.
I like, okay. So product market fit. Okay.
Right.
So I didn't know whether it'll continue after COVID, but at that
Right.
point, COVID looked like it's going to continue forever. So I was
Right.
like, okay, market fit right here. Um, but I also got scared because I know how I created the first survey, and I was absolutely certain that it would break in the field.
Right.
Um, okay, give me like a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. I will come back to you with something which is a little more sturdy than what I have right now. And then at that point, if you still think that you want to do it, we'll go ahead and do it.
Right.
So that's I think my reassessing and new approach story, where we figured out that okay, WhatsApp can be used to collect data, and the more we did it, the more clients got interested, because suddenly, so unlike in an online survey where distribution happens through a different medium. So for example, if you have like a Survey Monkey kind of a link, you'll
Right.
still distribute it through an email or something, right? So
Right.
the challenge is that you have to open the email. Two, you have to click on the link. Three, you have to let the web page open. Four, you have to get to the survey and answer the first question. There
Right.
we were sending WhatsApp, and it opened on WhatsApp right there. First click is the first question,
Right.
right? And this is what people realized over time, that the responses that you're getting are much higher, right?
Right.
And I'll tell you how that impacts. And I know I'm digressing a little, but just bear with me. Um, for one of our customers, we were collecting NPS. So they asked us to collect NPS.
Right.
Their NPS was deeply in the red. It was negative. So NPS is between -100 and +100.
Right.
And it's net promoter score. So it's the willingness of your customer to recommend you. And
Right.
it was deeply in red, right? So
Right.
people did not want to recommend them at all. So I asked them, okay, what's your response rate to your current survey? And they told me it was 0.2, 0.3%.
Okay.
So anyway, we went and started using WhatsApp. The response rate increased to 8 or 9%. And without them doing anything, that NPS actually started to move up, right?
Oh.
And the first reaction that they had was, listen, there is something going wrong. How is it that the NPS we haven't done anything. How is the NPS going up? There is
Right.
obviously something wrong. And the explanation behind that was, I just told you 4, 5 steps that you have to take to answer a survey, right? Like
Right.
open email, read it, click the link, let the page open, answer the first question, right? 5 steps is a lot of effort. Who takes
Absolutely.
that much? Who takes that much effort? Only the person who's deeply angry with you.
Right.
Nobody else will take that average. They
Right.
take that effort, right? So suddenly you have data from people who are deeply angry with you, and you think this is universally true for all your customers.
Right.
Literally, your response rate is 0.2%, right? Are
Right.
we chasing a ghost at this point? Are we chasing noise instead of signal, right?
Right.
So the sheer improvement in response rate meant that this was no longer the case. So people who
Right.
were satisfied with you or happy with you also started to respond to uh, that survey, and therefore average
Very
response went
interesting.
up.
Yeah,
Right.
because
So
it was easier for
now
them to respond to you now.
it's a click, right? It's already on
Yeah,
your WhatsApp, one question plus a button, and you're done. Right?
right.
Took away
Absolutely. Yeah.
all that 5.5 step effort that you required.
Yeah.
So took away that problem, increase the response rate, improve the net promoter score. They loved us. Obviously, they loved us. Who won't like that? I mean, but it also gave a lot more usable data than what I mean. I told them that listen, you're chasing a ghost. You're chasing a
Right.
problem that doesn't exist because you think there is something wrong with a certain set of customers, but it's exactly that. It's very small sliver of your customers who are not happy,
Right.
who basically form the bulk of your responses, and therefore this is what you're seeing.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So now that we talked about how you started Merren and how, we talked about customer experience a little bit, I do want to ask, given how fast we are evolving in terms of like tech and how the customers' expectations are evolving, what do you think makes for an exceptional customer experience for you? Like, what does it really look like?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think, and we just made a presentation for pest control category.
Right.
Customer experience there is don't don't be in front of me, right?
Right.
Be invisible, do your job, get out,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Quiet efficiency is
Right.
customer experience
Right.
versus something where you need a lot of hand holding. And so it really depends on the category you are playing in and
Right.
what is the expectation of the customers, right? Um, these pest control guys gave me a great example, right? So their net promoter score is very high, which is basically willingness to recommend.
Right.
And they said, listen, it's great that our willingness to recommend is very high. We just don't know how to leverage it, because if they tell me that, oh, contact this person who's my neighbor because they might have the same problem, I pick up the phone and call them that, listen, your neighbor tells us that you have a pest problem, and now that guy's not going to like it, right? That guy
Yeah.
is saying, okay, why is my neighbor talking to a third person about a problem that I have, right?
Right.
So you can personalize, you can find out somebody's problem, you can preempt, but experience is bad,
Right.
right? So you have customer experience has to be very category specific, very customer segment specific. Uh, for example, somebody who's an expert in a field, if somebody calls them and starts to like handhold them, they won't like it. Like, get to the business, right? Whereas you
Absolutely.
start to talk to a housewife in a small town, using technical terms and give them like a lot of information and all that, she's going to switch off, right? So
Absolutely.
it's a difficult balance to achieve. In fact,
Right.
one of the things that I think people will have a lot of challenge with, and where the industry is moving with the customer engagement, customer experience, is in personalization, right?
Right.
How much personalization is enough? Okay, so
Yeah.
till 5 years, people used to think of segment of one, right? Segment
Hmm.
of one is I want to understand this particular person. I want to understand Mansi, and therefore tailor everything, all communications, all solutions toward Mansi, the individual.
Right.
Uh, and it's increasingly that direction that we're moving in with AI, right?
Yeah.
Some point there'll be a counter movement because it's almost creepy when you know
It is.
everything
Yeah.
about me. Like,
Yeah.
who told you this? Right? You don't want
Absolutely.
some random person calling you and saying, oh, I know you have this problem, right? It's almost counterproductive. So one of the big challenges this industry would face is where and how the balance of customer experience, personalization, etc., is achieved. And I think we will struggle with it for a very long time.
Right.
And I don't will ever actually achieve a balance, just the right balance.
Right.
But I think it'll be very interesting. It'll be an interesting problem to solve 5 years from now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That is fantastic observation, Sumit, I might say. Straying away from that a little bit, I would like to talk about a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. So the way I see it, being a founder is a 24/7 job, right? Like it's ongoing. There is no sort of pause there. So how do you sort of make time for things that are important and recharge yourself? This is strictly an advice that if you would like to give for like our young listeners and people who want to become
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, but sort of don't know how to quite navigate that.
Hmm. See, when you start something, right? So
Hmm.
your viewers who are just about to start something would resonate with this. When you're starting something, you're very passionate about it.
Right.
You're very passionate about it. You want it, it doesn't even feel like work,
Yeah.
right? It gives you such a creative kick to keep thinking on it, to keep working on it, that it's easy to fall into that trap of that becoming the central thing in your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's almost a qualifying criteria for a business idea. Can it take over your mind space?
Right.
Would you, because if you're not passionate right in the beginning, there is no way 3 years, 4 years down the line, when you have to do all the TDS and all the GST and all that to stay passionate about something, right?
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
also a qualifying criteria, which basically means that every founder has to go through that phase of
Yeah.
this being the central thing in your life. Okay. Uh, but at some point, you have to realize that the thing that would keep your idea, your startup going is you, right? So
Right.
if you lose your balance, right, and the balance can be your mental sanity, can be your health, can be your family, and therefore that becoming a huge distraction, you lose that balance, and there is no way your startup is going to do well.
Right.
Right? It's in the growth stage, in the early stage when you're setting it up, growing it. So with time, and I'm not saying that I have figured out the perfect blend of that balance or that formula that would help us get there. But in general, what you would want to do is, yes, you are working, and ideally, I think planning is critical, right? To-do list, what is important. You can have those important, urgent kind of matrix where you can
Right.
decide what's important to be done. You can do that, but yeah, that's probably 8 to 10 hours of your day. Okay, you have to keep yourself healthy, right? Which basically means
Absolutely.
you have to get some form of exercise into your schedule. I have seen most founders tend to be type A personalities where you want to go get this little dose of adrenaline every day.
Yeah.
For me, sport therefore becomes a great way of that exercise. So I do like an hour uh, of tennis 3 or 4 times in a week.
Right.
Just um, family is critical. You have to make sure that your family is on board with your schedule. They understand the pressures that you're working under.
Right.
Um, you are there for them. I mean, if you have kids, show up for them because see, end of the day, you can sell your startup, you can close your startup. You can't sell your kids, you can't close your kids. They'll stay with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and you don't want a situation where when they grow up, they look back and say, "Oh, but you were not there when I was growing up," right? And it's going to
Absolutely.
hurt you like nothing else will, right? So,
Yeah.
important to keep the family at the center of all this as well. Um, you have to eventually figure out that yes, this is a passion project for you, but it's still work, right? So if you ask people who are like beyond their working age, 60 years, 70 years, to think back about their life experiences, they'll not tell you experiences related to work. They'll not say, "Oh, I was such a good accountant to this particular person," or that project that I worked on was spectacular. They'll talk about their experiences with their family or friends that they made, the places that they visited. So you have to remember that end of the day, that's what your life is. It's a series of experiences. This is one of the experiences. This is not
Absolutely.
entire life. So that's that. If once you get to that place, and I think each founder has to go through that journey and figure out their own balance, their own way of managing it. But you have to keep in mind that yes, prioritize your startup, but also keep a strong focus on your health, and keep a very strong focus on your family. I think if you manage to do these three things, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. That is fantastic advice, Sumit. I think a lot of our young entrepreneurs have a much to learn about balancing their work and their personal life. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think there is no like magic ocean. People have to find their own balance, and people would eventually. If you remember this, you will find a balance. If you forget about it at the right times, then you'll run into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with our listeners today. And before we let you go, where can our listeners learn more about Merren and connect with you?
You can go to our website, Merren.io, which is MERREN.io. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can look for Sumit Saxena Merren, and I will show up. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. If you want to send me an email, my email ID is sumit.saxena@merren.io. That is SUMIT Sumit.saxena SAXENA @merren.io. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you or your listeners have.
Absolutely perfect. All right. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to our listeners for joining on the 5 Day Snacks podcast. Until next time, remember to reflect, pause, and rethink.